Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Happy Harvest Homestead. Today, I sadly but necessarily have to tell you the story of how we lost a whole bunch of our meat rabbit breeders. This will be hard to explain. Hopefully you can follow along. I'll try my best, but it may be a bit confusing. But in order to make it as least confusing as possible, I'll start with stuff I've already told you and hopefully weave in all the happenings to the present day in some way that makes sense. So we are in the process of remodeling our meat rabbit colony, and to do that we had to first move the rabbits who were in the colony into other temporary setups. Most of the rabbits went into tractors, but then I ran out of room in the tractors, so I had to put the last 3 in a hutch. 2 of the tractors I put rabbits in were fully ready for rabbits. They didn't need any fixing up, but the 3rd one was missing some things, so I had to replace them and fix up a little bit before I could put rabbits in it. Part of that fixing up was replacing the wire that was on the bottom. The ideal wire I like to use is 1 inch by 2 inch welded wire. It's small enough so that rabbits can't dig out or slip through, but the holes are just big enough so that the rabbits can eat the pasture underneath the tractor. But when I was fixing up this 3rd tractor, we didn't have any of that type of wire, so I used the best of what was available, which was some extra 4 inch by 4 inch woven goat fencing. And even though the holes in that were much bigger than my preferred size of holes, I was going to put rabbits in there that I didn't super care about, and I was going to try really hard to keep them on flat, solid ground so that there wouldn't be any lumps or bumps and it'd be more difficult for them to squeeze out. But it turned out that my best efforts weren't enough. At one point we had 3 of the 4 rabbits in that tractor escape. Leah is the only good girl. She didn't escape once, but Izzy escaped, as you know if you watched the video about bottle feeding baby rabbits. Lavender and Asha also escaped several times, and since there really wasn't much I could do to fix the problem, I would just catch them and put them back in and then try really hard again. Every day I'd move the tractor to put it on super flat ground and make sure they had lots and lots of greens so they stayed busy eating and couldn't easily squeeze through. Some days it worked and no one got out. Some days it didn't work. What made this even more difficult was you need to move the tractor every day, so you can't just find one really good spot and leave it there. So every single day you have a completely new spot, and more often than not, that spot was not ideal. So Leah never escaped. Icily, she only escaped I think once, so she was also a pretty good girl. Lavender was not very good. She escaped like 3 or 4 times. And then Asha was the worst of the 4. She got out, and it took a very long time to catch her. And then she got out again, and that might have happened a couple times, but finally the last time she escaped and we couldn't catch her. The first few times a rabbit escapes, you can trick them into getting close to you and then grabbing them, or you can lure them into a trap. But if they escape a lot, it's much harder to catch them. And this ended up being the case with Asha, because the last time she escaped, we just couldn't catch her. And she's still out there to this day. I don't know if she's alive or dead. I'm assuming she got eaten by something because we have not seen her for a few weeks. So we went from 4 rabbits in that tractor to 3 rabbits. And then similar to Asha, Lavender would escape and we'd catch her. She'd escape again and we'd catch her. She would stay in the tractor for a bit longer and she was a bit easier to catch. But eventually, like Asha, she was avoiding capture for days and days. And we kind of gave up. We wouldn't even see her during the day. She'd go into the woods and hide. Sometimes she'd come back around the tractors and sniff her friends through the bars. But then I'd walk over, trying to sneak up on her or something, and she'd dart right back into the woods. So that was all very frustrating. And then while that was happening, we were having a lot of births, and as you know, all of them have gone bad. In addition to the ones I filmed about, we had a real quick litter with Ivy. She gave birth to like 3 kits. They were scattered around the cage she shared with Elody and Ivanhoe, and they were all dead. And then, funnily enough, afterwards, like 2 days later, she pulled a whole bunch of fur and built an amazing nest. So I'm going to save that nesting material and fur in a plastic bag for future litters who might need a little addition to their nest or whose mama doesn't pull fur. So that failed litter was not an entire loss. Then we caught Lavender, and I managed to convince my other family members to allow me to house rabbits temporarily on our back deck. I've been allowed to exercise rabbits there for years, but I guess housing rabbits permanently there, even just for a short time, took a little more convincing. But we were already cramming rabbits into spaces they weren't meant to be crammed into, and we were having some work done on our septic field where we were tractoring our rabbits, which meant a huge portion of our usable pasture was being ripped up and ran over by big machines. So I ended up putting Lavender and the 2 remaining does in the bad tractor, Leah and Izzy, on the deck. Also, as part of fixing our septic field and then doing some work on our pond, we had to move the rabbit hutch that I very sadly had to put 3 of our colony rabbits in. And already, as you know, I hate housing rabbits in cages, and these rabbits were transitioning very poorly from the colony to the cage. I think because they were used to having so much space to run and roam, it was especially hard for them to get used to this tiny wire box thing. Of course, it's not as small as a regular cage, and I still housed them together so they weren't completely friendless, but from their body language I could tell they did not enjoy it. And I think that their dislike for the cage living contributed to Ivy's bad litter, and possibly even contributed a little bit to poor Elody, though I think it's the heat that did the most damage. Unlike Ivy, who gave birth during the night, or maybe even cool hours of the early morning, Elody gave birth during the daytime when it was really hot, like 100 degrees. And from what I can tell, she died while giving birth. I found her dead and part of a kit in the cage. And that's the same day that Lavender died, also I think from heat stroke. I just found her dead on the deck colony. So we were left with Izzy and Leah in the deck colony, and Ivanhoe and Ivy in the hutch. So I decided to move the 2 remaining hutch rabbits onto the deck colony. And even though it's not the ideal way to do things, it ended up working out okay. After some initial scuffling, they settled down and tolerated each other. So for a few days after that, everything was great. And then I came out one night to do chores, and I only saw 2 rabbits on the deck. And then I looked over the deck's edge, and I saw a dead Ivy and a dead Ivanhoe. It turned out that they had jumped and died. So obviously our deck is not 100% rabbit proof. The slats are totally big enough for rabbits to jump through. And when I first started putting rabbits on the deck years and years ago, I was worried that they'd jump off. But for several years, I've housed rabbits on this deck, both adult rabbits, like the Angoras and Lolo, and baby rabbits, and no one has jumped off. There have been huge rainstorms that I've accidentally left them out in. It's been summertime and really hot, it's been wintertime and really cold, it's been windy, all different types of weather, all different seasons, all different rabbits of different breeds, of different ages. We've even had cats on the deck before with the rabbits, and they didn't care at all. They either would stay away from the cats or would investigate the cats, and half the time the cats were more scared of the rabbits than the rabbits were of them. So at this point in the present day, I didn't worry at all about the possibility of the rabbits jumping off because no one had ever done it before. Of course they would stick their heads through the little slats and then look around, look down, and I could kind of see them thinking pretty far down I probably shouldn't jump, and they'd move their head back. But I guess it was a set of unlucky circumstances, or I'm not even entirely sure what happened. The most likely thing I can think of that would make them spook or startle and jump off would be that one of our cats came up here to eat their food or go in their little hidey house, because this is technically, we call it the cat deck, because some of our cats like to hang out up here. So I think it's most likely that Scruffy came up here, it spooked the rabbits, and then Ivy and Ivanhoe jumped off. But even then, that doesn't seem super likely, because not only have we just had rabbits in general not be fazed at all by the cats in general, but these specific rabbits, not only have they been in a colony with high places and low places, so they've learned like depth perception and stuff. I can see how like a rabbit in a cage would have a hard time understanding high and low and like looking off and down if you're just used to one level your whole life. But these rabbits have had places to go up, places to go down. They've been jumping and running and hiding and going under and jumping on top and jumping off of things before in the colony. So it's not like they didn't understand what they were doing. But also they're used to other rabbits, goats, chickens, cats. We've had chickens go in their colony before and like lay eggs. We've even brought Roxy, our dog, in the colony when she was a puppy, or I guess more of a puppy. We've had her sit in the colony to kind of get used to the rabbits, and both Ivy and Ivanhoe weren't scared of her. They came up to her, this huge, massive dog with all this crazy energy. They've come up to her, smelled her, walked around her. They weren't scared of her. So the likelihood that they would be that scared of Scruffy doesn't seem super likely. So I guess if Scruffy came up here real suddenly, just startled them, and that's the most likely thing I can think of. So then we had 5 dead breeder rabbits in like the past week or two. And so at that point I freaked out and took the 2 remaining rabbits, put them back in the hutch. No rabbit is ever going back on the deck again until I put some sort of mesh or something up there, and maybe even like raise the level of the walls a little bit or something, because I never want to go through that again. It was especially hard because we lost so many so close together. And this was all going on while more litters being born and then dying. So it was all a very, very difficult, emotional, hard time. So now we have 8 meat rabbit breeders left. Jezzalia and Islanzati in the hutch, Sterling, Acrobat, and Zuzu in one tractor, and Cattail, Onyx, and Constance in the other tractor. And then we have Sylvan and Jolty, the 2 Angora rabbits, in our huge cage colony. So moving forward, we're going to keep to the plan we have of finishing the colony remodel, hopefully before fall, putting all the rabbits back in, and then if everything goes according to our plan and we have litters that are born alive and that their moms can keep alive, we'll be keeping lots and lots of kits. And then once we have a whole bunch of awesome breeders again, then we'll finally start butchering some kits to eat. So hopefully by next year, we have rabbit meat in the freezer that is meant to be butchered and eaten. For the past 2 years, I think all the rabbits we've eaten have just been breeders that we've culled. I actually might buy more breeders as well, especially because a lot of our awesome core breeders like Ivy and Elody are gone, and our 2 best mama does left are Acrobat and Jolty, and I'm not entirely sure how much I want to fully incorporate the Angora body structure into our meat rabbits, so I might buy rabbits with bigger, meatier bodies to kind of incorporate in. But maybe I won't have to. Maybe Leah and Izzy's litters will be big and meaty and beefy, and I'll just be able to selectively breed myself and won't be as hard as I thought. We will just have to see. So thanks for watching. I'm sorry this video wasn't happy, but now you guys are filled in. Sometimes it's easier to just bring the camera out with me and record what's happening, but then sometimes there are just too many little snippets, or it's too emotional and raw, and it's just easier for me to explain what happened succinctly in a video like this. Thanks again for watching. Bye!